The burgundy wine spread across my silver dress like blood on snow, and for a moment, the entire ballroom held its breath. Richard Kellerman, my department head for the past 3 years, stood there with his empty glass and that familiar sneer that had made so many employees' lives miserable. "Look who's pretending to belong at the executive table," he laughed, gesturing to his circle of sycophants. "Did you get lost on your way to the coat check, Sophia?" I felt every eye in the room on me, waiting to see if I'd run to the bathroom in tears like the last assistant he'd publicly humiliated. Instead, I calmly walked to the podium where the band had just finished their set, tapped the microphone twice, and smiled. "As your new CEO, effective Monday, let's discuss workplace respect." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice settling in champagne buckets across the room. But to understand how we got to this moment, me, Sophia Martinez, standing in a wine-stained dress announcing my hostile takeover of a company that had tried to break me, we need to go back 3 years. I started at Kellerman Industries as a junior analyst in the Strategic Development Department, fresh out of Wharton with my MBA, student loans that could buy a small house, and naive optimism about corporate meritocracy. The company was a mid-sized manufacturing firm that had been family-owned for 60 years, run by 3 generations of Kellermans who believed leadership was a birthright rather than an earned position. Richard Kellerman, grandson of the founder and head of my department, made it clear from day one that I didn't belong. "Diversity hire," he'd muttered just loud enough for me to hear when I passed his office. When I landed a major client that saved us $2 million annually, he announced in the team meeting that even broken clocks are right twice a day. "Document everything." My mentor, Janet from accounting, advised me early on. "Richard's got a reputation." So I did. Every snide comment, every project he stole credit for, every time he scheduled mandatory meetings during my pre-approved vacation days, every accidental exclusion from important client dinners. The documentation habit served me well, but not in the way Janet intended. Because while Richard was busy making my life hell, I was busy learning everything about Kellerman Industries, not just my department, everything. I spent nights studying financial reports going back decades. I mapped out supply chains, identified inefficiencies, understood why profits had been declining for 5 straight years despite a booming market. The company was bleeding money, and the Kellerman family was too busy protecting their egos to notice. "Why do you care so much?" my roommate asked, finding me at 3 a.m. surrounded by spreadsheets. "They treat you like garbage." "Because I'm not doing this for them," I replied, highlighting another wasteful expenditure. "I'm doing it for the 800 employees who depend on this place not going under." The turning point came 18 months into my tenure. Richard had just taken credit for my restructuring proposal that would save the company $5 million annually, presenting it to the board as his own work while I sat in the corner taking notes like a secretary. That night, I made a decision. If the Kellermans wouldn't save their company, I would, from them. I started with research. Quiet inquiries revealed that Kellerman Industries wasn't as family-controlled as it appeared. Old Samuel Kellerman, the founder, had been paranoid about his children fighting over the company, so he'd structured ownership oddly. The family held 45%, with the remaining 55% scattered among early investors, longtime employees, and a few institutional holders who'd long since forgotten about their small stake in a struggling manufacturing firm. Theoretically, my securities lawyer friend Marcus explained over drinks, someone could acquire majority control without the family even knowing. Theoretically, I agreed, already doing the math in my head. It took 6 months to set up the shell company, another 3 to track down shareholders. Most were happy to sell. Kellerman Industries hadn't paid dividends in years, and the share price had been stagnant for a decade. I offered them 20% above market value, paid for with my savings, a loan against my 401k, and a very understanding angel investor who happened to be my former professor. "You're really going to try to hostile take over your own employer?" Professor Williams asked, writing the check. "That's either brilliant or insane. ¿Por qué no los dos?" I replied, using humor to mask my terror. The beautiful part was that I kept working at Kellerman Industries the entire time, showing up every day, enduring Richard's abuse, producing exceptional work that he continued to steal. Nobody suspected the quiet Latina analyst was secretly buying up their company. By the time I owned 32%, I was the largest single shareholder. The family's 45% was split among 7 Kellermans who spent board meetings arguing about parking spaces. I kept buying, share by share, percentage point by percentage point. The September Gala was meant to celebrate Kellerman Industries' 60th anniversary. Black tie, champagne, and the entire company watching Richard parade around like the prince of a crumbling kingdom. I hadn't planned to reveal myself that night. I was going to wait until Monday's board meeting, handle things professionally. But then Richard saw me sitting at table 2, the executive table, where my nameplate read S. Martinez, major shareholder, and couldn't resist one more humiliation. He'd been drinking, his face flushed with champagne and entitlement. His wife Brittany laughed behind her hand as he accidentally tipped his wine glass onto my dress. "So sorry," he slurred. "Not sorry at all, but really, Sophia, you should know better than to sit with the grown-ups. This table is for people who actually matter to this company." "You're absolutely right," I said, standing up calmly despite the wine dripping down my dress. "People who matter to this company should sit here." I walked to the podium with the confidence of someone holding 51% of voting shares and a board resolution in their purse. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice carrying across the stunned ballroom. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration, but I have an announcement that couldn't wait until Monday." Richard started laughing, turning to his table. "Is she really? Someone should get her before." "As of 4:47 p.m. yesterday," I continued, "I successfully acquired majority control of Kellerman Industries through KM Holdings LLC. The board of directors has voted, and I will be assuming the role of chief executive officer effective Monday morning." The laughter died in Richard's throat. His father, old Thomas Kellerman, current CEO, half stood from his chair, his face purple. "This is impossible," Thomas sputtered. "The family controls 45%. I interrupted smoothly. "I control 51%. I have the documentation here, verified by the Securities Commission, but we can discuss details on Monday. Tonight, I wanted to address something more important." I looked directly at Richard, who seemed to be trying to disappear into his chair. "Kellerman Industries has 823 employees. Each one deserves to work in an environment free from harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power. Each one deserves leadership that values competence over connections, results over relationships, merit over malice." "You can't," Richard started. "I can, and I have," I said firmly. "Richard, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The wine stain on my dress will serve as a fitting end to your tenure here." 2 security guards, whom I'd briefed earlier just in case, moved toward Richard's table. He looked around wildly for support, but his sycophants were already calculating their survival under new management. "Dad," Richard pleaded to Thomas, "do something." "With what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Your father's shares? He has 12%. Your Uncle Robert has 11%. Your Aunt Patricia has 8%. Even if every Kellerman votes together, which, let's be honest, when has that ever happened? You can't override my decisions." "This is theft," Brittany shrieked. "You stole our company." "I bought it," I corrected, "on the open market, from shareholders who were tired of watching their investment stagnate under incompetent leadership. If you'd paid attention to anything besides your wine collection and country club fees, you might have noticed." I turned back to the room, addressing the employees who'd been frozen in shock. "To everyone else, I want you to know that changes are coming. Good changes. The restructuring plan that was presented as Richard's idea last year, we'll be implementing it fully. The employee pension that was too expensive to reinstate, we're bringing it back. The diversity and inclusion program that was dismissed as politically correct nonsense, it starts Tuesday." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Janet from accounting crying, happy tears. I hoped. "I've spent 3 years learning every aspect of this company," I continued, "not from an executive suite, but from the ground up. I've seen the waste, the inefficiency, the missed opportunities, but more importantly, I've seen the potential, the talent, the dedication of people who deserve better leadership than they've gotten." Security was now escorting a stumbling Richard toward the exit. He turned back one last time. "You are nothing," he screamed. "A nobody, a diversity hire. You think you can run this company?" "I know I can," I replied calmly, "because unlike you, I actually know how it works. I know that Maria in shipping has a better logistics system that you ignored because she's just a warehouse worker. I know that the night shift has been covering for a mechanical failure in line 3 for 6 months because you wouldn't approve the repair budget. I know that we're losing our best engineers to competitors because you think pizza parties are a substitute for competitive salaries." Richard's face went from red to white. He finally understood. I hadn't just bought the company, I'd studied it, learned it, prepared to fix everything he'd broken. As security finally got him through the door, I turned back to the room one last time. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said. "Monday, we get to work, real work." Building the company Kellerman Industries should have been all along. I stepped down from the podium to complete silence. Then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping, slow at first, then joined by another, then another. Maria from shipping, Janet from accounting, the night shift supervisors, the engineers Richard had belittled. Soon, the ballroom thundered with applause from everyone except the Kellerman family table. I walked back to my seat, wine still dripping from my dress, and picked up my champagne glass. To new beginnings. I toasted to no one in particular. To new beginnings. Hundreds of voices echoed back. Thomas Kellerman stood up, his face still purple but his voice controlled. This isn't over, Miss Martinez. We'll challenge this in court. No judge will allow. Thomas, I interrupted gently. I have 3 years of documented harassment from your son. Emails where you approved budgets that violated safety regulations. Board minutes where profitable ideas were rejected because they came from women or minorities. Do you really want all of that becoming public in a lawsuit? He sat back down heavily. Besides, I added, you're all still shareholders. If I succeed in turning this company around, and I will, your 45% will be worth far more than it is now. Sometimes the best thing a family can do for their business is let someone else run it. The rest of the evening was surreal. Employees approached me with ideas they'd been sitting on for years. Department heads who'd been afraid of Richard suddenly found their voices. The head of HR pulled me aside to show me a stack of harassment complaints against Richard that she'd been ordered to ignore. Monday? She asked hopefully. Monday, I confirmed. Every single one gets properly investigated. By the time the gala ended, my wine-stained dress had become a symbol. 3 different people told me they were framing photos of the moment Richard spilled his wine, the beginning of the end of the Kellerman dynasty. I drove home in my decade-old Honda Civic, the same one Richard had mocked in the parking lot countless times. My phone buzzed with messages, lawyers, reporters, employees, competitors. Tomorrow would be chaos. But tonight I sat in my small apartment, still in my stained dress, and pulled out the notebook where I'd been planning this for 18 months. Every move, every share purchase, every contingency. At the bottom of the last page, I'd written a quote from my grandmother, no te dejes, mija, don't let them. I hadn't. Monday morning came faster than expected. I arrived at 6 a.m., 3 hours before official start time, to find a line of employees already waiting by my new office. Word had spread over the weekend, not just about the takeover, but about the changes I'd promised. Richard's office, my office now, still reeked of his cologne and arrogance. I opened every window, then called maintenance. I want every executive office converted to glass walls by the end of the month, I told them. No more closed-door decisions. Transparency starts with actual transparency. By 9 a.m., I'd met with 17 department heads, approved the repair budget for Line 3, and scheduled investigations into every delayed HR complaint. The Kellerman family lawyers arrived at 10, threatening everything from securities fraud to defamation. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, demolished their arguments with surgical precision. Your clients are welcome to challenge the takeover, she told them, but I should warn you that discovery goes both ways. How many OSHA violations would we find? How many EEOC complaints buried? How many financial irregularities? They left without filing anything. The first 100 days were brutal. Half the executive team quit when they realized their golf buddy management style wouldn't fly anymore. The other half surprised me by stepping up, finally free to do their jobs without Kellerman interference. I promoted Maria from shipping to head of logistics. She saved us $3 million in the first quarter alone. The night shift supervisor who'd been covering for the Line 3 failure became production manager. He increased efficiency by 15% just by listening to his workers' suggestions. The Kellerman family fought every change, but their 45% meant nothing against my 51%. Thomas retired to pursue other interests. Translation: his wife threatened divorce if he didn't stop ranting about me at dinner. Other family members slowly accepted reality, especially when their dividend checks started arriving, the first in 5 years. Richard tried to start a competing company, convincing a few clients to jump ship. It folded in 6 months. Turns out, when your only skill is taking credit for others' work, you struggle when there's no one to steal from. The sweetest vindication came at the next year's gala. Same ballroom, same champagne, but a completely different energy. The company had its most profitable year in a decade. We'd expanded benefits, increased salaries, and still improved margins by cutting waste instead of workers. I wore silver again, the same designer, actually, who'd been horrified by the wine stain incident and insisted on dressing me for free. This time, No one questioned my right to sit anywhere I wanted. During my speech, I mentioned that we'd be starting a scholarship program for employees' children, funded by executive bonus reductions. We're calling it the Martinez Merit Scholarship, I announced, because merit should matter more than your last name. The applause was deafening. At the back of the room, I saw Thomas Kellerman raise his glass slightly, not quite a toast, but an acknowledgement. He was making more money as a passive shareholder than he ever had as CEO. After the speech, Janet from accounting found me at the bar. You know what the best part is? She said, slightly tipsy on success and champagne. Richard applied for a job here last week. Through the regular portal, HR rejected him in the first round. I shouldn't have laughed, but I did. What position? Junior analyst, in strategic development. The same position I'd held when he tormented me. Poetic justice, delivered by automated screening software that didn't care about last names. Maybe he should try the coat check, I suggested, remembering his words from that night. I hear we're hiring. 3 years later, Kellerman Industries, now KM Global after the rebrand, is valued at triple what I paid for it. We've acquired 2 competitors and expanded into emerging markets. The Harvard Business Review did a case study on our turnaround, calling it a textbook example of how toxic leadership can suppress a company's potential. Richard Kellerman now works as a middle manager at a paper supply company 2 states away. I know because he still sends LinkedIn requests every few months, which I ignore. His messages always include some variation of hoping to reconnect and valuable experience from our time working together, as if we ever worked together, as if he ever saw me as anything more than someone to step on while climbing a ladder he inherited rather than earned. The wine stain came out of my dress eventually. I had it framed, along with the share certificate showing my 51% ownership and a photo from that night, me at the podium, Richard being escorted out, and 800 employees realizing their company had finally been saved. From them, from incompetence, from the toxic belief that name and nepotism matter more than knowledge and work. My office, with its glass walls that scandalized the old guard, overlooks the production floor. Every morning, I watch the workers who really run this company clock in, and I remember what Richard said that night. Look who's pretending to belong. I wasn't pretending, I was preparing, and when someone spills wine on your dress, sometimes the best response isn't to clean it up. Sometimes it's to buy the whole damn winery. The last Kellerman family member sold their shares last month, said they needed the money for some investment opportunity, probably another one of Richard's schemes. I bought them, bringing my ownership to 96%. The remaining 4% belongs to employees through our profit-sharing program. Because that's the difference between us. The Kellermans thought ownership was about control, about keeping others out, about protecting their privilege. But real ownership? It's about responsibility, about building something worth having, about creating value for everyone, not just yourself. And sometimes, it's about standing up in a wine-stained dress and showing everyone what real leadership looks like. Even if you have to buy the whole company to do it.